Christ's sake, Ben, don't you understand? Americans love television. They wean their kids on it. Listen, they love game shows. They love wrestling. They love sports, violence. So what do? We give them what they want.
Hell yeah, Richard Dawson. Hell yeah, Family Feud, but with
language.
murder.
My God. I didn't know this was a blue podcast.
We go blue.
All right.
Steals the movie, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He does. Oh my God.
He's so good. He's amazing. He's just playing himself too. Kind of creepy. He's definitely creepy in real life too.
Oh yeah, there's stories, aren't there?
Yeah, lots of stories. Hey folks, welcome. This is Film Trace, a podcast where we trace the life of a film from conception to production, all the way to release and reception. It is our Manhunter season, or Manhunt season, whatever, one of the two. We're doing the 80s, and we're doing Manhunter. We're also doing The Running Man, which came out in 1987. Special guest has been on the show before, Brigitte. Say hello to the world.
Hello, world.
Yeah, exactly like that.
What's your listenership? Like,
we're in the dozens.
Half a bill.
There's dozens of them.
Yeah. I mean, most of them are bots, but that's fine.
Sure.
Bridget, are you still podcasting? You guys on hiatus?
We're on an extended hiatus.
Yeah. Hey, hype some of your published academic stuff, though.
I have a piece that's with the press currently that'll be part of an edited collection. It's my first time having like a chapter in an actual book, which is different than my own book or like a journal article. It is on resisting capitalism within the structures of higher ed, basically. So
right. So it's like The Running Man.
Yeah,
I mean,
adjacent.
Basically, yeah. I hope no one notices that I just wrote the story of The Running Man. Made for so many reviewers. But no, actually, our family podcast someday will come back from hiatus. But we've got all the old eps. If you want to listen to some wholesome stuff.
Yeah.
Screen Time, a quarantine family podcast.
Yep.
Kids reviews followed by grown-up reviews.
Yeah.
It's a good time. Yep. Glad to have you back, Brigitte. It has been a minute. What was the subject of the last episode you joined us on? Do you recall?
Valley Girl.
Valley Girl, yes.
Which is a special film for me. And then before that,
I think it was Swingers, wasn't it?
Yeah, and also there was a movie where like all I remember is that the interior of the house was very cluttered.
Desperate Hours.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Old, like season 2 or
I
something.
really got that right away.
Oh yeah, the cluttered house. It's gotta be the remake of Desperate Hours from 1990.
Yeah, just very cluttered. I don't remember what the movie was about at all.
So Brigitte.
Yeah.
We gave you choice from some episodes, and you gravitated towards this one pretty instantaneously. Yeah. And I know we're going to talk about Manhunter first, but real quick, so people can stick around for The Running Man, we should make it clear, like, this was a big deal for you as a child, right?
This was my first rated R movie. And I saw it, I'm pretty sure I was a third grader. It's possible I was a fourth grader, but definitely like 9 years old. And I was at a friend's house and I had spent the night at her house. And for a period of time during that sleepover, her parents left us in the charge of her 7th grade brother and 8th grade cousin. And like at the time, 7th and 8th grade boys felt like they were like James Spader to me, basically. It's like you're just like the coolest. Like I remember one of the brothers had like a full body-sized poster of Freddy Krueger on the back of his door in his bedroom, and I was like trying so hard to be like, I'm not scared of that.
You went to boys' bedrooms in 3rd grade?
I mean, it was a very brotherly, sisterly situation.
Oh, gotcha.
And to them, I'm sure we were like the babies that they had to be in charge with. So they were they were watching Running Man, and it was kind of like if you guys want to watch it, unless you're too scared. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not too scared. Yeah. And I was too scared, and it was terrifying, and it was rated R. And the minute my dad picked me up in the morning and I got into the car, and he's like, did you have a good time? And I was like, I watched a rated R movie. It was called Running Man. It was very scary.
Oh, man.
That's intense.
Yeah, it was intense. And I've not seen it again since we're rewatching it for this podcast. So it was really kind of amazing to revisit that.
Absolutely. Well, in a similar vein, I mean, I was in preschool when I saw Manhunter for the first time. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you weren't. Although I saw Dead Again when I was like weird because I was 3.
Yeah. No, the first R-rated movie for me was The Crow, and I was like 11, 10. But
The Crow is a lot scarier than Running Man. Like I have to say, rewatching it as an adult, I'm like, this is. My parents weren't very upset, and I can see why. Like they're like, do you have any questions? I was like, no. So
what's capitalism? So Michael Mann's Manhunter. Had you seen this one before, Brigitte?
No, I had never seen this one. I don't know that this was on my radar at all, and I liked it.
Yeah. Did you know it was the like original Hannibal Lecter movie?
No, I didn't. I'm not a Hannibal Lecter super fan. I love suspense horror.
Not and like Donald Trump. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, we have other things in common. But no, I enjoy Silence of the Lambs like anyone with a pulse, right, or a brain. Right. But no, I'd never heard of this even, so this was totally new to me. And I always love to get to see a new thriller. And like they don't make them like 80s and 90s thrillers anymore.
They really don't.
No, especially not like this.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So Dan, we kind of knew we had to do Manhunter, right, for the Manhunt season.
Yeah.
But I think it's officially your pick. So, is this like the centerpiece of the season, so to speak?
I think so. Like, I feel like this is, it was a film in the mid 80s. It didn't do all that well. In the box office. I think they didn't order enough prints or something to even send them out. So it was one of those situations where it just was never going to work. And I think like it's also like quite arty. It's Michael Mann kind of going out on a ledge to so to speak with his style here. It's so stylized that I felt like we just had to do it because it is kind of this arty. I don't know I guess you would call it a cult film because it just did not do well. And even within Michael Mann stuff, he obviously, got a lot bigger later on with Heat and, Last of the Mohicans, even just after this one. So it's a little bit, I wouldn't call it a hidden gem, but it's definitely on the less beaten path. But it is a really fascinating movie that is so stylized and I think very, very influential, which is why I felt like we had to cover it.
Right. And while it wasn't my first rated R movie, I do have a distinct memory, perhaps before I even realized that it was, in the same universe as Silence of the Lambs, of probably around that 10 or 11 age and seeing it edited for television on TBS, specifically the iconic Freddie Lowndes, the journalist on fire in the wheelchair coming down the ramp. And I even remember from that moment, like being like, this movie's weird. Like this is not like the usual TBS fare, right? And I couldn't tell if that made it a bad movie or made it an interesting one or a good one because I was 10. But it was one of those things where it's like it no matter how you see it or when you see it, whether it's part of Thomas Harris novels, is the original Brett Ratner's Red Dragon that would come out many years later, and this one was originally going to be titled Red Dragon, but there were so many kung fu movies in the 80s with the word dragon in the title, so they opted for something more generic. And yet, it is weird, right? Like it's Michael Mann. Like I feel like everybody knows Last of the Mohicans and The Insider, and yet Heat. Yeah. Is Heat still your favorite movie, Dan? Like of all time?
I think it used to be Chinatown,
Right.
And then I think Heat has taken it over. I did a rewatch about 4 months ago, and I was like, yeah, it's my favorite movie. Like,
I've never seen Chinatown. Is that bonkers?
Yeah, a little bonkers. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
I've never seen.
No, it's like Chinatown's like very like I would say a traditional like noir, but it's just like impeccably written. I mean, I think it's considered one of the better scripts ever written, and it's just unbelievable. We'll do it on the show eventually, I hope.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Invite me back. I'd love a reason to watch it.
Yeah, you bet. So Manhunter, I kind of gave you my rundown. Like, Bridget, you watched this for the first time.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm curious, like, just especially because you didn't know any of the baggage connected to it, and it played well for you, right? Like, what was it about the film for a fresh watch in 2024?
I liked how stylized it was, and like, so this is gonna maybe be a out of left field like thing to bring up, but I recently watched the movie Raising Cain. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, Brian De Palma.
Yes, and I feel like it like hit me the same way as that movie, where I was like, oh, I like this. It's weird. But I read the Wikipedia page after, and like, I don't think I even put together that it was the same as Red Dragon, a movie I've also seen and really just.
Yeah, it's so bad.
I remember going to see Red Dragon like in college, maybe at like a free for college students thing. And I think you were there, Chris, and maybe Mark. And
yeah, at the Bell Museum, right?
Yes, and it was like so bad that I was like, ugh, how is this a thing? So like, I mean, like, I feel like, I don't know, I'm going to be at a loss, but like, you already used the word stylized, both of you, many times, but like the fact that like, Red Dragon is like so heavy-handed in like, in case you're wondering what's happening in the story, it's this, and like. I appreciated that they respected that the viewers could like bring some of their own intelligence and interpretation to it, which is also what I like in a suspense movie, and why, even though I would actually say that like suspense / horror is horror is my favorite genre officially, but like suspense is kind of up there too, and like there are lots of bad horror movies, there are lots of really bad suspense movies, because I feel like I don't know, directors, writers, etc. are like afraid to like hold back in terms of like plot.
Yeah.
Right. So I appreciated that this did that, but I also felt kind of like an idiot reading about it after, and I was like, "Huh, okay,
No, I mean they are two completely different movies.
The story seemed a little familiar, but
it's really
there were novels that's based on novels, and
yes,
super curious about bringing that to my moms of the neighborhood book club.
Do it. How are you, Dan? Like, what's your earliest memory of Manhunter? Was it because
it's not that long ago?
Okay.
Like, yeah, I probably watched it for the first time about a decade ago. It's just probably going through. It was one of those movies where like it kept on popping up because I liked Heat, and I think I even saw this. Yeah, I saw this before I saw Thief. And I just like, I don't know. I wanted to check it out. Every shot that I saw of it was like, there's all these stills online of it. It's like, well, it's got to be great. Then I watched it. I was like, oh yeah, this is really, really interesting Michael Mann stuff. It's so different. I like attach this really to like Thief.
Yeah.
And definitely Heat. But mostly Thief. It's that 80s period of Mann. And it is so engrossing as like a visual work. Like it absolutely pulls you in. Almost every shot is meticulous and, just engaging. And I will say on the rewatch, there's some of the stuff that like stood out to me, after I've watched like Thief like 30 times in the last 3 years for some reason. And it's like, oh, like it hits very different than that movie.
Yeah.
Where I think this one feels very rooted to like 1986 and the time. Thief feels very more almost universal in a sense. Timeless, yeah. And yeah, it doesn't make Manhunter like worse or anything like that, but it does kind of feel dated. And I don't know, I remember it being better in my head, and I think that's one of the symptoms of it being so visually beautiful is that like my memory of it is like these shots, right? The ocean shots, the the Florida stuff, and like you said, like the reporter being murdered. But as I like tried to sit through it again, I was like, God, this feels kind of messy. Like the plot just kind of jumps all over the place. And I don't know, it reminded me that like man has this tendency to, really want to create something beautiful and unique and just gorgeous. And sometimes he forgets about like story beats,
Yeah.
And I think in this one, it's, clearly it's not like the book all that much. It can't be because it's a film, but it just sounds like there was a lot cut out here. And I do wonder, like, some of those decisions to cut out, like the backgrounds of the characters, did that like play well? There's only so much you can do in a movie, but I do feel like it felt a little light on the plot markers to kind of keep me engaged and keeping the story flowing. I don't know if you guys felt that at all.
I think I actually liked that about it.
Yeah.
And like this is gonna be absurd in a comparison too, but like because and we're gonna move into Running Man, and my husband is a #1 huge Stephen King fan, and we were talking about Running Man and talking about like The Shining and other adaptations, and he looked up some list of like the top film adaptations from King's books and talking about how much King hated The Shining. So the again, I feel like it's like genre specific, but like I don't need a lot of backgrounds for characters, and I kind of like the messiness, and I like that both like when I think about like what are my favorite like horror movies and suspense movies and what makes them scary, like I think a lot more about like them being effective than like the plot sticking. Does that make sense? And I feel like this was like effective, and I think less is more sometimes with especially character backgrounds and like motivations. And this is another bonkers maybe thing to bring in, but like one of my favorite movies of all time is Halloween, the original Halloween. And what I hated, among other things, about the Rob Zombie remake of Halloween is like adding a layer of background to Michael Myers by showing his childhood. And it's just one of those things, or like my favorite suspense movie is always Fatal Attraction. Like you can't get better than that. And like, I don't want to know like why Glenn Close's character is the way she is. I don't know if I'm hitting exactly what you're describing,
right? Well,
but like,
that's a common kind of explanation for what makes Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter so scary in Silence of the Lambs, right? Is that like we absolutely believe that he eats people. We don't really need to or want to. It makes it scarier and more effective, in fact, if we don't know exactly how he got to the point of eating people, right?
Like there's a lack of humanizing, which makes them like, these are like the monsters. And this wasn't, I don't want to put this movie, I liked it. I didn't love it as much as Silence of the Lambs or Fatal Attraction or Halloween, but like I liked one of the things I liked about it was kind of the not telling me too much about what was happening.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I feel like I'm kind of in between the two of you. And partially it's like the rewatch effect, of course, is like, you know, you're going to, sometimes things are going to unfurl in a way where you're like, oh my God, it makes me love it even more. But sometimes things are going to unfurl in a way where you're like, oh, that is like a thing I didn't realize last time. That is kind of annoying. And the thing that just like didn't hit me well this time is William Petersen as the lead, Will Graham. And I think part of that, at least for me, which makes things even more messy when talking about like contextualizing and you know, finding one person effective versus another. But I was also a huge fan of the NBC series Hannibal, and that that retells the Red Dragon story as well. And Hugh Dancy just has like such a different and more like substantive performance as Will Graham, while still retaining a lot of that mystery that makes the character work, and like an interesting version of the detective that gets too close to their, you know, suspects. And I feel like just Petersen in this movie is just like all dead eyes, and like I can't figure that part out. I think Tom Noonan as Dollarhide, the Tooth Fairy, is incredible. I still absolutely love every scene with this dude, even to the point where, like, it's also like this unique take on the serial killer, right? That is like, he's not sociopathic. It's almost like he loves too much, right? He feels too much, and it almost gets to the point where like his monologues are like kind of abstract and like avant-garde almost, along with Michael Mann's like lighting and all the different gels he's probably using. And the Italian cinematographer Dante Spinetti is like just coming up with all different ways to like represent murder without actually like explicitly showing it to us. Those are all the things I love. But then every time Petersen walks on screen, I'm just like, I know he's the CSI dude now, right? And that's also part of like the hard recontextualization.
CSI.
He's well.
Is that a television show?
Yes, and my mom watched it
like
kind of religiously.
It's like boomer catnip.
Yeah, no, I know. I've not seen that, so that didn't spoil. I can't remember the actor's name like you do, but the person who played Will Graham in the series,
yes,
Chris, I did not like him.
Oh man, I love him.
He ruined the series for me, and I couldn't continue to watch it. And I was like,
oh no,
this portrayal felt so over the top of like, I'm an empath. Or am I insane? And it's like, okay, yeah.
I love that. I love that it leaned into the histrionics.
It was too much. I also like, I don't know if we're there yet, but Brian Cox, like I've never met a project he's been involved in that I didn't immediately love. So
he's fantastic. It almost makes you wonder why they didn't bring him back for Silence of the Lambs, as insane as that is to say in retrospect.
Also, I'm seeing that John Lithgow was considered in that role. So I guess Raising Cain wasn't such a bonkers thing for me to bring up.
Absolutely not. De Palma and Mann, I feel like, are kind of kindred spirits in a way, with especially when it comes to like depicting crime on screen. Okay, so Dan, break this down a little bit, because like one of the classic criticisms of Michael Mann, and this goes all the way back to Manhunter and arguably even Miami Vice, which obviously he stole a lot of the stylistic aspects from, and like amped him up times a million for this movie, is that like he's just like, he's a control freak, right? He's like a film bro, David 100%. Fincher type, just like a maniac. And Tom Noonan has said this in retrospect. That's why he never worked with him again. Spinotti, the cinematographer, readily admits that like Michael has this really just like grueling work schedule when it comes to getting the right light and the right shot. And is that part of it? Is you think like he overworks things to the point where then he loses track of some of those more important pieces, especially earlier in his career?
Yeah, I mean, I think like he does that thing of total immersion into the subject, into like the vibe and the look that he wants to get. He's like he's an obsessive, and I think like obsessives, as much as there can be a good output from that, sometimes it's never like a good working relationship that comes out of it, right? I think that like there's also, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that like an obsessive can easily have a myopic view of things. And I think that like that's a little bit of what I was feeling with this. The movie feels a little suffocating, and I feel like that's maybe kind of the point. But it's so suffocating in terms of like feeling like we're with the main character tracking this killer, trying to become the killer, that like there's not a lot of oxygen to see another perspective here, and to see it from I don't know, just a more like a viewer, right? Like, and I think that's maybe like a successful thing about it, that like you're in it with the protagonist, and usually I'm like, that's really important, you've got to do that. But I think in this case I'm too much with them. And I feel claustrophobic when I'm watching it, and like the way that he's trying to break down the serial killer and his behavior, it seems it's another obsessive. It's someone who can't control themselves, who must solve the problem. I mean, it is really a mirror to Michael Mann, right? And like what he's what he's always done, whether it be like Ferrari, which was terrible, but he was still obsessive about it. It's the reason why he started his own website that you got to pay like $60 a month or something to get background footage of his movies, which I would never do. It's disgusting. But like, he's just one of those guys who has to go all in all the time. He's not great to work with because of that. And sometimes it works out really well, like Heat, where it's, I think, basically a masterpiece. And then like Manhunter to me feels like lesser man. Like it just feels a little too, he's stifling his own creativity in a sense.
Interesting.
Doesn't mean it's like great on some level, but it's missing some creative spark on the storytelling side for me to really be like, I want to watch it again, over and over again.
Did not make any in 2009 and 2023? Sorry.
What was that?
Michael Mann?
Yeah.
Because of Public Enemies, yeah. I mean, can you imagine being on a set with both Michael Mann and Johnny Depp? That sounds awful.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's that he gets in his own way. And just to go back to like, why then Thief, which is, 5 years before this, how did he manage to hit on something so timeless and universal there that he's not, it's almost like he tries to overcompensate with the style in Manhunter to try to meet that. And once again, under the caveat, I do like this movie a lot, and I look forward to watching it again, if only for the visuals and the sound alone. But I also, once again, I mean, it comes down to the lead. Like James Caan is perfect in Thief, right? De Niro and Pacino are perfect in Heat. So I mean, I think he miscalculated with casting Petersen, even though he had all the other pieces ready there. The other thing that was that stood out to me as you were talking about this idea of like total immersion is like it also sucks that not only William Petersen went on to do CSI and was typecast after that as the brooding detective, but also just this like explosion of the genre and kind of what you were alluding to, Brigitte, of like the notoriously mediocre like thriller, right? Where it's just like hunting a killer or the killer's hunting you or both. And specifically the scene that stood out to me on this rewatch was like when they figure out where to find the Tooth Fairy, right? And it's just like this scene of William Petersen and Dennis Farina, who's great. I think he nails that role as Jack Crawford.
He's good. Yeah,
he's so good. But they're just like in an office room together, and they're like making calls, and then it's just like a huge exposition dump to help explain how the forensic evidence led them to where they went, and that just felt very much like that's the part that unfortunately Hollywood took it to think was like the key to like making a successful thriller movie. It's like, we just need people on phones figuring things out, right? It's like so annoying in retrospect, unfortunately.
I think the other thing too that pops into my head where this one's different, I don't know, there's something about like Thief is such a Chicago movie.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It is so sucked into Chicago and the look of Chicago and the feel of it, and really captures a certain aspect of that city. Heat's Los Angeles. He never really leaves Los Angeles. There's different elements of the place. I think with Manhunter, it's kind of there's a moment at the end where they're talking about St. Louis and Missouri, and it's like the Learjet flying into the St. Louis airport, where he's really immersed in place. Other than that, it's so dislocated. Yes, you have the Florida stop, but it just feels like this sort of like dreamscape, right? It doesn't feel real, which is bizarre for Mann because he's so specific about realism. I mean, think about them like breaking into the security system in Thief, where they're like going through the phone lines one by one, right? Or like he's so obsessed about the technical aspects of being a thief or a cop or whatever.
All the like legal delays in The Insider and stuff.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's elements of it in Manhunter, but like, yeah, he really does. He goes for vibes. It's a Zoomer movie.
Okay, so I should show this one in class.
Yeah, I would love this.
Go for vibes. And I am a Zoomer, I think, so.
I know. Well, you just turned 25, so.
I just turned 25, yeah. So you didn't feel like you were immersed in like Alabama or is that where Atlanta?
It jumps around. That's part of the nature of the manhunt genre too, right? He jumps around,
jumping all over the place. And I think, I don't know. I think like it's I don't. It's here's the thing. I'm critical of it because I love Michael Mann. No, if you lay this out with other movies, it's a really good movie.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You're hardest on the ones you love the most, right?
Exactly. Oh man. Okay, so in an attempt to switch gears to The Running Man, I'm curious because these movies are 1 year apart from each other, and basically the only thing they have in common is that classic like 80s oversaturated like maximalism, right? Yeah. It's just two very different brands of that maximalism. And I don't know about you guys, but it was kind of a whiplash for me. I don't know how close you watched them together, but like I finished Manhunter and then threw on The Running Man.
And I watched them like a week apart, so it wasn't terrible.
Okay.
But I mean, the aesthetic is similar. The vibes is similar. And I think also like the opposite of universality or timelessness, like you were saying, Dan, feels similar. Right? Like there's something about both of them where like it's 1986, 87. Like the movies like scream that.
Right.
Yeah, they're so of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But they also very much both predicted the future in some ways. In terms of storytelling anyways. Like you wouldn't have all these crime shows arguably without Manhunter, and you wouldn't have the Hunger Games and all these similar like reality deathmatch stories, dystopian.
I mean, I hear you. I think that like they are of a genre that existed before them and will continue to exist after them. I don't know that I would say either of the movies was like a necessary predecessor, especially like the Running Man to Hunger Games. Like I those to me feel thematically so different, actually. And like there's something about the Running Man too where it's like this is a story we've heard before, right? I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't want to jump ahead, but I feel like it's like the story is like not like rooted in 1986. Like here's the first time we're hearing this story and it will be retold and retold and retold. Like the film itself feels very 1986, which is hilarious because it's supposed to be 2017, right? But the story itself was like this is a retelling. And I feel the same with Manhunter. Like these are stories that are like as old as the genre in terms of like the basic elements and tapping into like these essential either individual or like societal cultural fears.
Yeah.
And Manhunter is interesting because it's like, what does it mean to like exist outside of these norms that like keep us safe? At least that was my big read, right? And then like it's like almost like the flip side of that with Running Man of like, what does it mean to have societal norms no longer exist to keep us safe? And it's the opposite, right? So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to discredit them, but like, I don't see a direct lineage. I guess I don't see either of them as like foundational in like the storytelling aspect.
Okay, so I totally get you on like the zoomed out wide scope like view of these stories. I guess I'm And I definitely see it for Manhunter, right? Like stories about murder and murderers and trying to find a murderer always have existed and will continue to. Like specifically this concept of a game show where people fight to the death of becoming like the main source of entertainment for mollifying the masses.
It's just a gladiator, though, right?
So going back to like Roman times.
Yeah. So like, I guess in terms of like I guess this is Film Trace, so we're talking about film. So like,
yeah, trace it.
Film specifically, like, yes, I think Running Man was like, oh, we haven't seen a movie like this in a while, or we haven't seen a movie like this set in a dystopian future that I can think of. I can't make that claim completely, right? But like, I feel like it's the story of like what it like. This is a piece of humanity, like, and that existed, and I think it's kind of grappling with like that. I can think of, and I'm not going to be able to recall them because I didn't prepare like you guys prepare, but like both of these are based on novels, short stories. I can't remember if Running Man was a short story or a novel, but
it's a novel by King's pen name,
right? Yeah,
Bachman.
But I feel like that it's a as a book or as a novel, it's not like King didn't come up with that premise, even of it like in a dystopian future instead of like a telling of like a Roman times of like, wasn't this society horrendous? I don't know.
It feels like it's so the I don't know, the subgenre here is like dystopian fiction, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's, and it feels like a little bit kind of like a different in terms of the game show. Was reality TV a thing back in the 80s?
That's the other thing. It's
like not the way it exists now, right? But game shows are a thing,
right? Like American Gladiators, right?
Yeah,
but that was like late in the 80s, like 89 or something.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't in the early 80s. It was kind of more like a 90s thing. And that's the one thing I couldn't figure out. I was watching. I was like, oh, this is like really fascinating take on reality TV. Then I was like, well, reality TV didn't exist in the same way as it does right now.
No, but I think, I mean, they would have called it a game show.
Yeah.
Right? Like like hyper reality, like, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more like
Rollerball from 75.
Right. Yeah, that's another interesting one. Yeah. There wasn't like the televised aspect there, though, was there? It was more like a live spectator sport. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it is interesting that like I'm trying to think of like what are some of like the classic 80s game shows.
Classic 80s game shows.
Press Your Luck.
Yeah, Press Your Luck. Like there's some kind of like this manic energy to it at least. Almost just like it almost felt exploitative. Like these people were going crazy over no whammies, right?
Yeah.
Win, lose, or draw.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know, this the thing about this movie, because I'd never seen it before, and I started watching it, I was like, holy, this is, I think the thing that stood out to me, I don't know, Brigitte, on your newer watch, did you love it when you first saw it, and then like what's your reaction now seeing it? Does it feel
I mean, as a 9-year-old, I was terrified, and like, so I rewatched it and I had Mark watch it with me, I don't think he had ever seen it before, but I think he knew about it or read the book maybe. But the only thing I remember is the stuff that happens during the game show. I have like no memory of like what got him there. So like my memory is like the whole movie is like I have a very specific memory of him like sitting in that thing going like into like what I remember thinking was like a giant maze. Like I didn't really understand it, or like
the luge of death. Yeah.
We had hamsters as a kid, and I was like, oh no.
Right, yeah, it's totally a hamster maze.
It's a giant hamster thing, and we're gonna watch him run around and kill or be killed, right? No, and I mean, like, so I probably actually, now that I'm reflecting on this, when I told my dad about it, he was the one who probably said like, that's what they used to do in Roman times. Isn't that interesting? And I was probably like, no. But like, I think I can think of so many, and these are more academic-y pieces, but like articles and other things I've read too about like likening like gladiator sports and things like that to like I mean, so like the other reality TV that has existed, that's not a game show, but it'd be like televised sports, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
like some of which are like not to the death in the same way, but like quite brutal.
Yeah.
And thinking about how like different like bodies are treated as commodities and entertainment, right? So I also like, yeah, I didn't remember like any of the framework of how he got there, or that there were these like political prisoners, there were like a resistance. I just remember like this horrible reality where like he was in a hamster cage, like running around. And then he was okay because he was Arnold Schwarzenegger, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it was originally going to be Christopher Reeve.
Yeah,
in the lead role.
In the book, like he's a pretty regular guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So one of the interesting choices. Yeah. And like, so here's okay. So I'm gonna go against what I said earlier, but like I did find myself while I was watching it this time, like I wanted a little more of like his backstory or character growth. Like this is actually a movie where his growth as a character feels like not nuanced or interesting enough for me.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And like what, like, cause you're not like a cop in this kind of situation where everything is so like heavily propagandized that you believe in like what's right and what's wrong. And you're just going to be like, that's a bad thing to do. I'm not going to kill innocent people. Like you don't, what kind of, and then like, there are only like a couple moments I can think of, even like during his imprisonment and escape, and then like being part of the show where he has this realization of like, oh, I support the resistance. So like, even though like he didn't want to bomb people and he knew that was wrong, and then he knew that he was like framed, he still didn't want to partner with these resistance guys because like they were bad and he was good. Like, so like, I don't know, like that was, I still loved it because it like, it was a great action flick, I would say. But like, yeah, that piece was like, felt kind of forced or hollow for me.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of, for me, it set it up right from the start. I mean, you know, it's an 80s Schwarzenegger movie, and it's not by James Cameron, so it's probably going to be somewhat garbagey, right? But I think that lends itself to the question that I'm interested, Dan, especially since you saw it for the first time, right on the heels of us completing a whole season about camp cinema. Was it camp? Is it camp?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's well.
What are the parameters that you use to define what is camp?
We did a whole season on that.
Right. Yeah, we had different Susan Sontag quote in every
episode.
Oh
yeah, I actually, of course, I listened to those.
I mean, the thing is, but it's definitely not intentional camp,
right?
Like this is
naive camp, yeah,
it's naive camp. Like the dynamo. I mean, come on, that's amazing, absolutely amazing, but completely absurd. Like the whole thing. What blows my mind about it is that like it does come across as a very I get that it's an action movie and like I can cut it some slack and some break, but like this is a TV director.
Yep.
Like he shot like a TV show, and Schwarzenegger said that too afterwards.
It's literally Starsky of Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, it's just there's something about it that it just seems so shoddy across the board. Like every shot, like on the opening, I couldn't believe what I was seeing with my eyes. I was like, how did this was a thing? And like, they spent a lot of money on this movie. It is fun and definitely campy, and it's a definitely it's a fun ride. But it just does not seem like a work that was labored over in the right ways, perhaps in the wrong ways. And there's, to Bridget's point, like, what is the story here? Like, it sounds like the book. I've never read the book, but from what I've kind of can glean from things, it way more in depth. Like, huge changes to this thing. Like, the book takes place across the entire, like, United States. It's not like, it's
not as much running involved as I thought.
Yeah.
No.
And
not as much running.
Yeah, I honestly, it took me like 5 sittings to get through it.
Oh wow!
Because I just was like, I can't bring myself to pay attention, and like that being said, if I was like upstairs after work, like watching it, it'd be one thing, but like trying to pay attention to it is just like it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah.
And I love Arnold. Like I'm a big Arnold fan, and I love his action. Like Commando. Come on,
Right.
This one just felt so like I don't know, like they were anything they wanted to throw at the wall, they just threw it out there and see. Richard Dawson holds it down. Right?
Oh my god, he's so good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great quote from Vincent Canby's New York Times review when the film came out, saying that Mr. Dawson steals the movie as a personality composed of equal parts Phil Donahue, Merv Griffin, and Robespierre. There is a, I don't know, there always felt like something nagging to me at the end of like most of the story beats or like the major act turns that I'm curious what you guys think about it. Is like we have obviously seen this story before, especially in 2024, but the thing that never really has clicked with me about any of these kinds of stories, and I will readily admit that like I thought the first Hunger Games book was trashy and readable, and I saw the movie, but it's also like, I don't know, how do we get from dystopian fiction like 1984 and to a place where we're like just straight up like people's bodies, like, I mean, you said it so much more eloquently, Brigitte, where it's like I could see a Cronenberg movie where it's about like the destruction of the human body televised for the public.
Yeah.
And it would be way more interesting than just like, what if there was a reality show competition where people killed each other? Like,
well, and it's like, even like the like on the like, is this even like dystopian fiction? Like the book definitely is, but
right.
the movie is like it, and it's not dystopian like 1984. It's dystopian like, what's the movie where they put on the sunglasses and they can see the truth?
They live.
It's dystopian like They Live. Do you know what I mean? Like, where like we don't have any like, so the context in the book too is like there's this like economic collapse, and then there's this totalitarian government, and there's a lot of interesting themes that are kind of like in the movie, but like not really fleshed out, like how film can be edited to lie to people and to control people, right? So like film as a specific part of what's happening in television, or like how television is a tool in propaganda in a specific way. And I feel like these are the kind of things that like come out kind of in like They Live too, but like it's very different than like one of the things that makes a good like dystopian genre, if that's the genre we're putting this into, versus like something else like thriller, action, whatever, suspense. Like you need to have like some kind of political context, and I don't actually feel like this film had that. Like it wasn't a critique of capitalism.
Oh, definitely
it was a critique of like violence. Like, I mean, or like
corporate media.
Yeah,
or just like overall fascism. I don't know.
Kind of, but even that, it would just like, and I think that's part of like the no nuance in like there are good guys and there are bad guys.
Yeah.
And like all it takes for the bad guys to become good guys is for them to like pull back the veil, and it happens in these moments that seem so easy that it seems impossible to also imagine that in this universe most people are violently, like, are controlled by this violence. So like the female character, the one woman whose name I can't even remember.
Maria Conchita Alonso is the
yes. What's the character's name? Anyway, Amber Mendez.
I was going to say like, love interest. Yeah.
Love interest. Yeah. So she's also like, you're a bad guy because I saw on TV that you're a bad guy. Oh my God. And then she just had this moment of like, wait a minute, that film looks different than the original film, and like goes and sees it, and it's like for the first time is like film can be edited to show people a version of the truth that they want to see, and it's like she does a total 180 after like, this is where, and like same thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger is like, I can't bomb innocent people. Like, isn't your job bombing innocent people?
Yeah, it's like
You're literally in a helicopter.
So like it feels like tricky to even like you're saying, Chris, like maybe there's like some subgenre or side genre. Like is this really dystopian future, or is this like something else? I don't know.
Yeah. It's almost like it has this quality to it where it's like when you like a middle school boy thinks they've come up with a really great idea for a short story, right? Where but like it's there's no fleshing out. There's not even like basic comprehension of politics. The I also found this interesting because I in the spring watched Predator with my film studies class, which also featured both future governors, Schwarzenegger and Ventura, and it was amazing seeing how political and savvy that film is in comparison to most other Schwarzenegger movies, and yet like it just seems like there's no space for that to even happen in the running man because we're so focused on like the dancers in spandex and the next video game big bad that Schwarzenegger has to defeat. I don't know. It's unfortunate, but it's also like it would be a lot of fun to watch at a theater with a bunch of people.
Yes, and it is a lot of fun. And like,
oh yeah,
despite all this criticism, like I like my critiques of it, like I enjoyed in like a scary, thrilling way. I enjoyed it when I was a kid, and I enjoyed watching it again as an adult. And I'm also like I am in my own way also a Stephen King fan, even though like a lot of his books are hit or miss for me, but the ones that hit like really really hit and are some of my favorite things. But this reminded me a lot of the Long Walk, and can't remember if that came out before or after, but it's like it's a similar premise where and this is another Richard Bachman publication, but it's like the premise is like it's a near future America is a police state. 100 boys are selected to enter a annual contest where they like get whatever they want if they win, and all you have to do is like walk across the country without stopping basically. And so but like it's the idea of like, so there's something about the Running Man, even this adaptation of it, that felt like very like Stephen King isn't in the business always of writing like a dystopian novel. Like for him, it's like probably, I mean, I'm speaking for King, but like, no, the part that's important is like the game. And like, it's like the audience is like, we're being in this, it's like the short story, The Lottery, where like, it doesn't matter what got us here. We're not necessarily critiquing different systems. We're like, we're immersed in this universe where this feels scary to us. Are we going to make it out? Right. And like the Long Walk is kind of like that too, where it's like, oh, it's not a political critique necessarily of like what got us here. It's just like, here we are. And I've thought of a premise kind of like you said, Chris, of like someone thinking like, what would be cool or scary? Like that's probably what started the book, I would imagine, like knowing something about his like process as a writer, right? And then you work backwards from there. So
I also feel like it would be remiss to mention that the whole like how The Running Man became a movie seems to be very much in this vein of like just people being like, oh, this is cool. It was like literally like a CEO that was at an airport bookstore and picked up the novel, and then not knowing that Richard Bachman was Stephen King, like tried to see, because he had so much money, he was just like, I wonder what it would cost to like buy the rights to turn it into a film. And that's basically what happened. And then all of a sudden he found out how expensive it was, and the publisher had to reveal that it was because it was a Stephen King story, not just a random, airport bookstore writer. And so I feel like that's very much like, it's one of the great ironies of the world of movie adaptations, is like it's largely going to come from people that are looking to make money rather than looking to make art, like most serious novelists like King are.
Yeah, that's fair. And like I like it's interesting knowing that because like now or like I don't know how far this stretches back, but like King like kind of famously like will sell the rights to his books super cheap if someone gives him like a pitch that he likes.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm sure this was I don't know how established or wealthy or he was in 87, but like this is many years after, right? So I don't know anything about his opinion of this movie. I wonder if he liked it. Did you find that out in your research?
Oh, he hates it.
Oh,
He
yeah.
thinks
Sure he does.
it's one of the worst adaptations of his work.
Because I haven't read the book, but I'm assuming that it's completely misses the point of the book, right? And there's not a big point to this movie besides like here's some fun, flashy stuff, some action scenes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's also funny. It's a funny movie.
Yeah. Oh my god, the one-liner, like when the double one-liner is like one of the silliest things from 80s cinema, and it hits so funny in 2024. Like you think that Arnold's just gonna make one pun. Nope. Give it a beat. There's a second one. God.
Yeah.
Speaking of points, you guys want to earn some trivia points?
I guess.
Yeah, trivia points.
Okay. You got this, Brigitte.
Oh.
Dan is not great at trivia.
Oh.
I sent you guys a visual aid because 80s movies, especially ones that are in the Manhunt subgenre,
subgenre. Okay,
are kind of few and far between, to be honest. This is probably just going to get harder when we do the 70s next week, Dan.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I feel like it was kind of a
so
90s weird thing.
So I've got 5 films. The graphic in front of you has 14. So you have decent odds at guessing it.
Okay.
The clues I'm giving you are the locations in the films. So it's Manhunt. So we're hopping over. There's a lot of dislocation happening, Dan. I hope that's okay with you. As I name locations, the first person to guess the correct answer gets the point. Best out of 5 wins.
I'm gonna say locations, and we're gonna guess which movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it. We're gonna start off with an easy one. Okay.
Okay.
We're at a lake house, and then the town of Hope, Washington State, and then on the outskirts of that town, and then to the sheriff's station, into the woods.
Oh, I know this.
Stand by Me?
Nope.
First Blood.
Yes, the original Rambo, First Blood.
How many guesses do we get?
It's just the first person who guesses correctly. Yeah. So just say all 14, and I'll tell you when you win.
Okay.
All right, number 2. You got this, Bridget.
Yeah.
Paradise Street, White Oaks, New Mexico, Lincoln County, Tunstall's Ranch, Woodland Carriage Road, Horrell's Bar, a campfire.
Death Hunt.
Nope.
Oh. Do a campfire, right?
Yeah, sure. Lincoln Plaza.
Young Guns?
Yeah, good work, Bridget.
I'm like, which of these movies look like? Okay, yeah.
Renegades. Okay.
The rest was all right.
Number 3. Upper East Side, New York City. A brownstone apartment.
Cop.
No.
No, I know this one.
Police parking lot. Limehouse, Chinatown.
I just watched this.
Oh, did you? So say it, Dan.
Black Rain?
Yes.
Black Rain?
Yeah. What brought you to watching Black Rain? Was this your first watch of Black Rain?
First watch, yeah. I don't know. I watched it with Molly, friend of the show.
Nice.
Movie night, and it just came up that I'd never seen it. She's like, you got to watch it.
Oh man,
I loved it. It was
it's
fun.
so good. It's so good. Bridget, have you seen it?
No, and it's a Michael Douglas movie, and you know
Oh,
it's good.
okay.
Yeah, it's so
Bridget, next time I come over, we're gonna watch Black Rain. Okay.
I was gonna say I'll get it on our special space, and you come over soon.
you'll find it on streaming. Yes.
I won't do it. I have a gentleman who finds it for me.
It's out there.
Get her
Just
hands.
gotta know how to grab it.
All right. You're down 2-1, Bridget, but you're gonna bring it back to the tie.
At the exact same time as him. I just want to.
Oh. I gave it to him by a millisecond.
Right.
I gotta keep you humble, Bridget.
Oh.
Number 4, an alley in New York. Harry's office.
Cop?
You're gonna keep guessing James Woods' Cop. No,
I've never seen Cop. Looks kind of dumb, but fun.
I'd watch it. Harlem Street, Kingdom Mission, Leafy Lane, Upstate, Fowler's Kitchen.
I'm gonna say I don't know this one, but I'm gonna say Angel Heart.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
Good work, Dan. Yes.
Never seen it.
Oh my God, Mickey Rourke tries to find a killer going from New York to Louisiana, and Robert De Niro plays the actual devil.
Amazing.
It's a wild ride. Okay, but we always do this, Bridget. If you get the last one, because you're the guest, then you win. So you got this. Number 5.
It's Cop.
I should quickly look up the locations in Cop just so it's not Cop. I'll tell you that.
It's not Cop.
All right.
Hudson River, New York City, West Village, the Eagle's Nest, the Ramrod,
The Hunter.
the Cockpit. No, not Hunter.
Cruising.
Yeah, there you go. The Cockpit, right? Oh
Cruise
my gosh.
for a killer.
Oh my gosh. Have you guys seen Cruising?
I've not seen Cruising.
Oh my God. William Friedkin and Al Pacino in Gonzo mode. It's so good.
Is it good? I gotta see it then.
It's so good.
Love it.
And yeah, so he's searching for a serial killer in the meatpacking district, all the S&M gay clubs.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I remember seeing some stills from it.
Yeah, it's nuts. Well, Brigitte, thank you so much for joining us once again. Yeah, what an eclectic mix of episodes. Desperate Hours, speaking of Mickey Rourke, and then Valley Girl, and now The Running Man. So I think we got to get you back on the rom-com train sometime when we do another season.
Love rom-coms, but I'll be here if you need me.
or what movie? Chinatown, right? That's
Chinatown. Don't worry, I'll finagle it in somehow.
All right. It's rom-com. Is that's what's on deck? You're doing rom-com?
I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah. Any thriller, horror is.
We need to do another horror season, Chris.
Yes, we do need to do another horror season.
Self-aware
Who's clicking
horror.
a pen? Who's clicking a pen?
Oh, that's my bad. We're live. Are we live? Cut it out. Cut that. Yeah, we need to do the horror season at some point.
Yeah. Bridget, what's the journal that people can find your stuff in?
Well, the book is a book, and it'll come through you.
Chat for the book. That's right.
And you don't want to buy it because it'll probably cost $150. So if anyone's interested, you'd reach out to Chris and Dan, and I'll send you a copy. It's published in Technical Communication Quarterly, and Rhetoric Review, and Journal of Communication Pedagogy, and Biz something with business. I can't remember the names of all the journals.
I hope there's an academic journal called Something with Business.
With business. I got a textbook. You can find me. Find my textbook.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Dan. What do we got coming up next week?
Got 1970s Apocalypse Now and Logan's Run. I've never seen Logan's Run, so excited for that.
Oh, you're gonna like it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. And then I'm doing the rewatch of Apocalypse Now. Wow, it's a long movie. It's a tough one, but a great one. All right, thanks for listening. This has been Film Trace.